Reading 37 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 1. Birdlip, February 21st, 1942. The Law of Seven. The Sun Octave. Part 4. Today we will speak of the small octave between the sun and the moon. The octave created by the intelligence of the sun sounds 3 notes on the earth, La, Sol, Fa, which represent the living machine called organic life on earth, of which man is a part. At present, we will not speak of the meaning of the different notes of this small octave. What must be first understood is that man does not appear in the great octave of creation, but in the little side octave proceeding from the sun. Man is a special creation within the ray. Let us now try to grasp why man appears and why the small octave is necessary. The reason why the intelligence of the sun creates this small octave is to fill the gap or place of missing semitone between Fa and Mi in the great ray, due to the nature of the law of 7. Unless something were created at this point, the force passing down the ray from the absolute could not pass freely to the earth and the moon. A shock is necessary at this point owing to the nature of the law of 7. This law governs the order of creation and beings about conditions at certain points where something must be added in the nature of a shock. The law of 7 is therefore sometimes referred to as the law of shocks. Understand this clearly. Certain shocks are required at certain points in the unfolding or progress or evolution of anything. The intelligence of the earth or the planets is not great enough to create anything to act as a shock at this point. The intelligence of the sun is needed. But the sun, in creating the small octave, has 2 objects which it is essential to grasp and distinguish between very clearly. One object is to create a sensitive, transmitting machine between the great notes Fa and Mi in the great ray to enable the force to pass to the earth and moon at the termination of the ray. From this point of view, organic life, including man, exists only for the purposes of the ray, and its creation is due to the nature of the law of 7. Which causes certain difficult or narrow places to appear in the order of creation. If this were the only object, man's situation would be one in which, as a part of this transmitting machine, he must always serve the ray and its evolution, which takes place over immense periods of time. The other object is connected with the sun itself. In creating the small octave, the sun is not merely creating on behalf of the ray itself to fill a missing place, but is also acting for itself. The sun wants something apart from the needs of the ray of creation. It is here that the possibilities of man are found. Let us now think of this idea, which it is of such fundamental importance to understand in this work. The intelligence of the sun wants something for itself in creating man on earth, quite apart from the necessities of the great ray. What does it want? It wants man to ascend from the level of the earth to the level of the sun. For this reason, it creates man as something incomplete, as an unfinished being. In what sense incomplete? In regard to being a part of organic life, serving the purposes of the ray of creation, he is complete, and nothing more is required of him than the life he ordinarily leads. He is capable of living on earth as he is. He is then said in the work to serve nature. But in regard to his real origin from the octave, from the sun, he has another destiny locked up in him. In regard to this destiny, man is unfinished, incomplete, because the intelligence of the sun has created him for another reason, and has put in him, apart from what is necessary to serve nature, other powers and possibilities. That is, man has in him far more than is necessary for the purposes of serving nature. In speaking of nature here, what is meant is all life on earth, all that we must see around us on the earth, the life of plants, animals, trees, fishes, and also the life of mankind, with all its struggles, all the killing, pain, birth and death, which all together make up this perpetual motion machine called organic life, created by the sun to transmit influences from the upper to the lower part of the ray of creation. In regard to the second object of the sun, man is created on the earth as incomplete in order that he may develop up to the level of being represented by the sun. It is in this sense that man is said in the work to be a self-developing organism. Man is thus an experiment of the sun, placed on the earth. He can remain asleep and serve organic life, or he can awake and serve the sun. If he had been created with the same being and intelligence as the sun, he would not be on earth. Man has therefore two explanations. He is created to serve nature, that is, to be part of organic life. And in this sense, it is not in the interests of nature that man should develop, and so cease to serve nature. But man is also created to develop himself until he reaches the level of the sun. If you will make the effort to think, if you will really try to understand the meaning of the ray of creation and the octave from the sun, many inexplicable and apparently irreconcilable things will become clear to your mind. That is, you will be able to begin to think rightly about life on earth and of man's situation. That is, of your own situation. Part 5. Speaking in an external way about the ray of creation, it is quite obvious that physical life on earth depends on the physical sun. But for the physical light and heat of the sun, no life on earth could exist. Every green leaf, every blade of grass, every form of the algae floating in the sea is a minute solar machine that receives energy from the sun and by its means manufactures from air, water, and minerals, food substances upon which all animal creation feeds. But when we speak of the intelligence of the sun, we are speaking of another light, seen only internally by the mind, the light of intelligence. And so we are speaking of the ray of creation in an internal sense, as a vertical scale of intelligence and being, of increasing excellence as we ascend it. In this respect, the intelligence of the sun is divine in relation to the intelligence of the earth. In the vast evolution of the ray itself, on inconceivable scales of time, the intelligence of the earth may reach the level of the sun. This is not necessarily guaranteed. The earth may die, having attained nothing. In the same way, the moon may or may not reach to the intelligence of the earth. We cannot see the sun or earth or moon as beings, as intelligences. One reason is that we see them as cross-sections of themselves, as mere circles in the sky, just as two-dimensional beings whose world was limited to a large sheet of paper would see a man only where he cut their plane, namely as a circle, as a slice of the man, such as we see in a book of anatomy. But from the standpoint of this system, the moon is a growing and developing being, and in time may attain to the same level of being as the earth. Then, near it, a new moon will appear, and the earth will become the sun, its sun. At one time, the sun was like the earth, and the earth like the moon. And earlier still, the sun was like the moon. The work teaches that the whole universe is evolving, and this means that our ray, with our moon, our earth, planets, and sun, is evolving, as well as all the infinite number of other rays. But parts of our ray may fail at the allotted period of time to have reached the necessary stage of development, and so will be destroyed. As was said, if the evolution of man depended on the evolution of the total ray of creation itself that reaches us, his chances would be remote. Insofar as man is part of organic life, and organic life serves the purposes of our ray, his evolution would be held back until all the processes of the cosmic evolution of the moon and earth, and of the planets and the sun above us, had been fulfilled. But man has other chances, special chances, which are due to the small octave from the sun in which he is created. For man is specially created. In this small octave, he can rise or fall. He can reach the level of the sun or fall to the level of the moon. Fully developed man, that is, man number 7, has reached the intelligence of the sun. He has attained his full development and is under only 12 laws. So for him there is freedom. For all freedom is gained by rising in the vertical scale of creation, and so passing under fewer laws. And at the same time, man number 7 has attained immortality on the scale of the life of the sun. You have heard already many times that there are different levels of man. To speak of man is not enough. Which man do you mean? People living on earth can belong to very different levels. Just as there are different levels of man, so are there different levels in the universe regarded as a vertical scale of being or scale of intelligence. The intelligence of the sun is divine to us on the earth. The influences of the sun reaching us through the small octave are of a higher order than are those of the planetary world, which are again higher than those at the level of the earth or those coming from the moon beneath us. A man can be under the influences of the sun, or the influences of the planets, or the earth or the moon. And for man there is a certain possibility of making a choice of influences. In other words, of passing from one influence to another. For example, if a man begins to struggle with negative emotions, he begins to pass out of one of the influences of the moon. If a man remembers himself, he begins to pass first under planetary influences and eventually under the influences of the sun. But he must learn to make an inner choice, and to do so, he must know a great deal about himself and about different eyes in him and about parts of centers. The influence of the sun reaches higher centers. But when a man lives in mechanical parts of centers, he is under far lower influences. You must understand one thing. It is impossible to become free from one influence without becoming subject to another. All work on oneself consists in choosing the influence to which you want to subject yourself and actually falling under this influence. And here, by long observation, you must know what you want in this respect. Part 6. The machine, called organic life on earth, not only transmits forces down the ray of creation, but creates within itself certain forces which pass to the growing moon and assist in its development. The moon feeds on organic life apart from receiving forces passing down the ray. For example, all useless suffering on earth is food for the moon, such as negative emotions. Pain is food for the moon, and for this reason it is sometimes said that organic life is a pain factory. Pain and death feed the moon, and a certain quantity is required. For this reason, sacrifices were initiated in past ages by those who understood. Many things could be said here, taking organic life only from the point of view of a machine inserted at a particular point in the ray for a particular purpose, namely to serve the ray. For you must understand that man has no significance in the ray itself, save as a part of organic life. But in regard to the sun which creates him, man has the greatest significance if he chooses to find it. Here there is a door open to him, not leading up the gigantic ray itself, but up a separate ladder beside it. This is one meaning of the parable of the prodigal son. Man can return to the Father. Many other significant things are said in the New Testament that are connected with the sun Octave. You have already seen that the sun wants something for itself in creating man on earth. Man is not created only for the purpose of the ray, but is created for the purposes of the sun, as an experiment in self-evolution. Unless this self-evolution of man is fulfilled in sufficient numbers, the sun will not receive what it wants and will not be satisfied. Let us take one out of the many parables in this connection in the Gospels. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit thereon and found none. And he said unto the vine dresser, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why doth it also cumber the ground? And he, answering, saith unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I shall dig about it and dung it, and if it bear fruit thenceforth, well, but if not, thou shalt cut it down. Do not try to understand this parable literally. Understand it psychologically, and you will see that it means that man has certain possibilities which can come to fruition, and unless some fruit is produced, man will be cut off. Part 7. All that has been said so far, however briefly, about the creation of the universe, through the action of the law of 3 and the law of 7, and about the octave from the sun, should make it impossible now for any of you to say, if there is a God, why does he allow things to happen on the earth as they do? But you will have to make your own effort of thought in connection with all that has been said about creation and the tremendous ideas and massive diagrams given to answer that question clearly and strongly from your new understanding. For unless you can arrange your thoughts on this question, which is so baffling and such a stumbling block to the vast majority of people, the right connections in your mind, in your intellectual center, will not be made. According to an ancient saying, God must be justified. Looking round on life, you will find this difficult if you do not understand creation. You will not see the difficulties and restrictions involved in creation inevitably, nor the doors left open, and so you will secretly harbor a feeling difficult to define but negative in character that is capable of shutting you from every higher development of the understanding. You must get things the right way up in your mind, and you cannot do so unless you realize the conditions and limitations of creation. The difficulty is that even when people come in contact with esoteric teaching, they will not listen to it, or if they do not understand it or really see what it means and take hold of it themselves as one takes hold of a rope. We have only to look sincerely at ourselves to realize how difficult it is to work and how much we sleep. Yet the real, most intense meaning of man on earth lies in this octave from the sun, into which he can grow internally and come under other influences. In our case, we must subject ourselves to the influences of the work and obey them. Once mankind loses all connection with the intelligence of the sun, it will inevitably be destroyed, and that is perhaps especially the danger today. And it is the same thing on the scale of an individual man. Once he loses contact with the better eyes in himself, once he loses all faith, all meaning, all affirmation, all deeper understanding, he destroys himself. And when life assumes evil forms, a man easily weakens. But if the work is built up in his mind so that he thinks from it, above all things in life, nothing can weaken him.